So it's September the 15th, 2022. The merge trademark has happened. Ethereum has moved from proof of work to proof of stake. It no longer requires energy, it no longer requires mining hardware. Blockchains can be green, there's sun, there's rainbows, and all is good with the world. So why does Bitcoin use proof of work? And can a proof of stake system offer the same security guarantees and robustness as a proof of work system? And the short answer, if you want to skip the video, is no. So let's explore how Bitcoin works. So Bitcoin has a network of full nodes. All the full nodes on the network are verifying that each new block that comes in is meeting the consensus rules. Every transaction in that block is meeting the consensus rules. A full node can verify the blockchain from the very first block that was mined by Satoshi, the Genesis block, up until the blocks that are coming in today, that they're all meeting the consensus rules. Okay? And it doesn't really matter whether you hold 1,000 Bitcoin or whether you hold 0 Bitcoin. When you spin up a full node, you're verifying that the blocks are meeting consensus rules and nothing more. Okay? So what's the point of miners or proof of work in the system? Well, proof of work elegantly solves this problem of me showing up to the network and saying, hey, I've got this new valid block with new transactions in. I want this new block to be the next block that's added to the blockchain tip. And then someone else says, hold on, wait a second. I'd much prefer this block to be added to the tip of the blockchain. It contains a couple of different transactions. I'd rather this one as the next block. And you can imagine it's not just going to be two of us, right? Potentially thousands or tens of thousands of people who all might have slightly different blocks that they want to be added to the tip of the blockchain. So how Bitcoin solves this, it goes, okay, it's way too easy to propose a block, right? We're going to define a competition where you construct a valid block, but then on top of that you have to enter into this game or competition where you try lots and lots of numbers until you meet a constraint that is defined in the consensus rules, right? Whether you can meet this difficulty target. And this competition is fair in the sense that it's directly proportional to the hash rate you're bringing to the table. The more hash rate that you're able to exert on this problem, the more likely you are to find a new block before anybody else. And also, it's robust in the sense that a miner can drop off and stop attempting to mine new blocks. And although the network hash rate falls a little, and this arguably reduces the immutability of new blocks that are coming in, but Bitcoin just chugs along just fine. Like the other miners are competing to mine new blocks, and it doesn't matter too much that a miner's dropped off. In addition, new miners can show up out of the blue, and the chances of them finding a new block and getting a block reward is directly proportional to the hash rate they're bringing to the table, and is not at all impacted by the fact that they haven't been involved in this competition up until now. So you can have miners drop off, you can have new miners come in, and the system just keeps on chugging along just fine. Now, as the price of Bitcoin has gone up, the competition's gone up, the difficulty target's gone up, just because people are desperate to get a hold of these block rewards. It's nothing to do with a transaction needing all of this hash rate to be secured in the blockchain. It's just a result of this competition that solves this problem of, well, how do we decide which is the next block added to the blockchain? Okay. So that's proof of work. Proof of stake says, okay, we don't need this mining malarkey. We don't need proof of work. We're going to solve it a different way. We're going to say, right, whoever owns the most, in Ethereum it's Ether, whoever owns the most Ether gets to decide which blocks are added to the tip of the blockchain. Okay, and so if you own a huge amount of Ethereum and and you're able to secure it, you don't get hacked, you don't lose it, then you effectively got control over a proportion of block production for the rest of Ethereum's existence, right? You don't have this dynamic of miners coming in and out and engaging in fair competition. You have a staker who can maintain their level of dominance for the rest of Ethereum's existence. You also have to have a way of punishing bad behaviour or malicious behaviour, trying to exploit weaknesses or vulnerabilities in the way that block production is coded up, like the logic of block production, right? So if you try to exploit the fact that a certain staker who's supposed to be adding a block to the blockchain at that point is unresponsive and offline, and you try to cause confusion, or you try to cause people to add the block that you propose rather than a block that other people think should be added, then you have to have a way of punishing them. And in Ethereum lingo, this is called like slashing deposits. So you've gone from a system where miners can't do anything other than add new blocks to the blockchain, and full nodes can't do anything apart from verify that consensus rules are being met on new blocks, to having a combination of Ethereum developers and Ethereum stakers or depositors deciding how some people's deposits can get slashed or seized based on their behaviour or lack of ability to meet the requirements of them in a staking system where you're deciding which block to be added, and if a block isn't being added within a sufficient amount of time, who gets to choose that next block to add it to the tip. So it just becomes a much more hideously complex problem in which, assuming there's malicious activity, which in any adversarial system there's going to eventually be malicious activity, you just have this like dynamic of stakers, depositors potentially being slashed, crying about it, asking the developers to change the code such that that doesn't happen again, or even saying to the developers, well, can you give me back my deposit, because my deposit shouldn't have been slashed, I just made an honest mistake, I shouldn't be punished for an honest mistake. And you go from a very modular, understandable system to this entwined system of stakers and developers trying to work out which block should be added to the tip of the blockchain. And it can work in a centralized system, in like a proof of Vitalik-like system, where it's like, okay, if there's any disputes or we need to change the code and we need to decide whether a deposit should have been slashed or not, we'll just ask Vitalik. But I mean, that's the same system as a banking system and a central bank deciding how much money should be printed and governments deciding which accounts should be frozen, right? It's just, in these types of scenarios, there is no need for a blockchain. And so, a proof-of-stake blockchain seems to me entirely decentralization and censorship-resistant theatre. It's not real. It's not the best attempt to keep a decentralized, censorship-resistant system chugging along, no matter who comes in and out, if nodes come in and out, drop in and off, miners drop in and off, and constraining their ability to impact funds that have been locked in address for months or years. It's just security and decentralization theatre. So where does this leave Ethereum? Well, I don't think anything's changed. Ethereum has changed the monetary supply. It has now completely revamped the consensus mechanism. Vitalik has talked previously about the types of scenarios where deposits or stakers should be slashed. And I mean, if this is a system you want to build upon going forward, good luck to you. But if you have any sanity, you should try and cut through the nonsense and the hype about proof of stake being green, and actually try to understand why proof of work is there in the first place, and how proof of stake is just not comparable with regards to censorship and robustness.